Hello, hello, Jamie Trull here, your favorite CPA and financial literacy coach. And today we're going to be talking about travel write-offs. So specifically, we're going to be talking about business deductions related to travel for work and how to maximize those write-offs. Okay, now I want to preface this by saying, first of all, everything we're going to talk about today is completely above board. I am a CPA. These are not some strange loopholes that I'm going to give you. These are just things that are completely legal and are just based off of knowing and understanding the IRS rules around deducting travel. So don't worry if you're skittish, if you're worried you're going to get in trouble for any of these things. These are coming directly from the IRS rules related to travel. So we're going to start breaking down some of those things that could save you big money and also help you to be able to get some personal perks for travel as well on the business dime. Now, real quick, before we jump into it, I have to give a quick disclaimer because yes, I am a CPA, but I am not your CPA. And therefore, I think it's always a good idea to talk about these specific things and your specific circumstances with your CPA. And also to know the fact that depending on your entity structure and your ownership type, some of these things may be more applicable than others. So for example, most of what we're talking about today would be applicable to anyone that files a Schedule C, if you are a sole proprietor, LLC. If you are an S Corp or a C Corp, the rules may be a little bit different, and that's where it can be good to talk to an accountant. Now, real quick sidebar before we jump into the meat of this content today, I want to tell you that if you want to win $1,000, if you like free money, who doesn't like free money? Then I want you to join our giveaway. It's super easy. All you have to do is go to jamietrull.com/giveaway, and you get entries just for doing things like subscribing to this channel, which you might already have done, right? Or subscribing to our newsletter. So make sure to jump on over there and enter the contest because we are giving away $1,000 to one of our YouTube subscribers on August 1st, and it could be you. Now, the first of the 6 tips that we're going to talk about today for maximizing your travel deductions is to, of course, know what costs are deductible. Now, that's an obvious one, of course, to start with, but it is important. We want to make sure we understand the costs that are deductible as travel expenses for business. So those are typically going to be things like airfare, rental cars, lodging, meals. Now, remember, meals are typically only going to be 50% deductible. There are some special rules in place for 2021 and in 2022 that are allowing for a full deduction because of COVID-related reasons, but in general, we expect that to go back to 50% in 2023. Okay, but you still want to make sure that you are tracking those expenses and getting credit for those expenses. It also includes things like tips or if you need laundry service while you're gone. Right? So all these little things that kind of add up over time. If you have telephone charges, you could even potentially be able to write those off because you are using the telephone for business while you are traveling. And even things like luggage or shipping things to the destination where they need to be, that also is going to count. So make sure not to miss any of those deductions because they do add up. Now, important to point out, there is one thing that is typically not deductible anymore, and that is entertainment expenses. They previously were deductible before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but back in 2018, that changed, and you can no longer deduct that. Even if you're taking a client out to entertain them, that is not going to be deductible. Now, you could take them to a meal. Again, that would still count under meals, and that would be 50% deductible typically. However, entertainment, taking them to a baseball game or to a Broadway show or to a concert, something like that, would not be deductible at all. Now, tip number 2 is to spend at least 50% of your trip on business. So that means 50% of the days that you are there should be spent on business. That's specifically true if you're taking a domestic trip within the United States, okay? So the reason that that's preferable is you still will probably have to divvy up between business and personal how much you get to deduct versus how much you don't, right? But the great thing about if it's over 50% is you get to deduct those travel expenses. So the airplane fare potentially or the car rental or anything like that that you are using to get to and from the place that you are going, right? That is going to be deductible as long as more than half the trip is for business, okay? Now, if less than half the trip is for business, you can't deduct any of that to and from because the primary purpose is not for business. So just make sure if you're there for 10 days that at least 6 of them you're working. Now, if you're traveling internationally, it's a little bit different, but I recommend that if you are going international to keep it under 7 days. Now, the reason that I say that is because it gets more complicated when it goes above 7 days as far as being able to deduct the actual travel expenses, i.e. the airfare to get there, right? However, if it's under 7 days, even if you only spend a part of that time working, maybe you only work 1 out of the 6 days that you are there, you can deduct the full airfare and transportation charges that you incur to get to and from where you are going. So that's the great thing about keeping it under 7 days. Again, it gets more complicated with how you can split it out and what counts as business versus personal when you go over 7 days. But if you keep it under 7 days, then you're going to be able to deduct the full airfare, which is usually a large part of the expenses. Now, piggybacking on what we were just talking about with the travel element, right, and making sure that you're working at least 50% if you're traveling domestically, my tip number 3 is to basically spread out your work. Make sure you're working about 4-ish hours a day. That's what the IRS considers to be a day of work. So if you have, let's say, 20 hours of work to do, spread that out over 5 days. Don't do it in 3. And if you spread it out over more days, that means more of those days are considered to be for business purposes, and a higher proportion of your trip will be considered business, meaning you can write off all the meals on those days, you can write off your lodging on those days, etc. So that's another great tip to make sure that you can maximize those deductions, is to spread your work out and just make sure you're working 4-ish or a little bit more, maybe hours per day, so that it counts as a business day. And of course, keep super good records. Okay, that goes without saying here, but I want to make sure that everybody knows we need to make sure we're keeping records of what we were doing each day in order to substantiate our travel deductions in case we are ever audited by the IRS. So we're going to keep going just in a minute with tips 4 through 6. However, we're going to have a quick intermission. Okay, quick intermission. I'll be right back. Okay, y'all. This is the intermission. We're having a puppy intermission. Because he needed to make his debut. This is my new puppy, Skip. Say hi, Skip. Hi! And I wanted to introduce him to all of you, and we needed a puppy intermission. Who does not need more puppy love in their life? He's the sweetest thing in the entire world, and I adore him, and he just sits underneath my feet when I do YouTube videos. So you can picture that each time you watch me do a YouTube video from now on. So if you like Skip, if you want to say, hey Skip, if you think he's the cutest puppy other than probably your own in the whole world, then I want you to give me a like on this video and a comment on this video. Say hi to Skip. And maybe we'll make the puppy intermission a thing. What do you think? Should this be a thing? I think it should be. Sorry for the cuteness overload. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Let's go to tip number 4 for maximizing your travel deductions. And this is one of my favorite tips because it is so often overlooked and it can have a significant impact, especially if you're gone for business for a longer period of time, okay? So I want you to consider using per diem rates for meals and incidentals instead of actual expenses. So what the heck does that mean? The U.S. General Services Administration, okay, publishes per diem rates for various different locations. So basically you put in your city and your state that you are traveling to, and it will tell you what the allowed deduction is, okay, per diem deduction that you could use in place of actual expenses. So it'll tell you how much you can spend on food and incidentals, meals and incidentals, right, during that time that you're there per day, and deduct it. And especially if you're a person that travels extremely leanly, right? So let's say you're going to New York City, for example, and your favorite things in New York City are $1 slices of pizza on the corner and New York cheesecake. And I speak from experience, that's literally all I eat. Maybe some bagels, okay? So perhaps you look and say, okay, I'm only spending about $25 a day on food when I am in New York City. Well, if you actually look up the per diem rates, and I'm going to link down below the website for these per diem rates, so you can go look them up yourselves because they do change, so you want to make sure that you're up to date on what they are. The current rate for New York City is $79 a day. Okay, so if I'm gone for a week and I'm only spending $25 a day, but I'm getting a deduction of $79 a day, I might actually be somehow making money off of this trip, which is kind of crazy, but it is completely allowable, okay? And the way that you actually do that in practice is typically then, if you know you're going to use the per diem rates, you are going to not expense through your business, right? The actual meals and incidentals being things like tips, etc., right? And instead what you're going to do is do a journal entry, and your accountant or bookkeeper can probably help you with this if you don't know how to do this, but do a journal entry essentially for adding this in. And typically it's going to be a journal entry that goes against equity, okay? So that is what I recommend, is to put these expenses in, potentially put these per diem expenses in manually, and you might be able to get bigger deductions. Again, record keeping is going to be huge here, so you want to make sure you keep really good records of where those per diem rates came from and how you put them in, and make sure you don't double count, right? You don't want to do actual expenses and per diem, that would be double counting. Unfortunately, there are lodging rates that you will see here on this website, but those lodging rates can only be used by if you work for the government. So unfortunately, business owners can't deduct the lodging rates that are put in here. I would love to be able to do that. Then I'd go stay on a friend's couch and deduct all the lodging, but unfortunately, business owners cannot do that, but you can take the per diem rate for meals and incidentals. So moving on to tip number 5, it is to take the Scenic route. And that sounds a little bit strange as to why that would be able to maximize your travel deductions, but ultimately your travel days are considered business days, especially if you're spending over 50% of your full trip, right, on business. Those are considered to be travel business days. And that means that your expenses on those days are deductible. Okay, now you don't have to take the most direct route to get somewhere. You can take the Scenic route, and that's still going to be something that counts as a business day. Okay, so even if it takes you, 12 hours to get somewhere because you made 4 stops along the way instead of 4 hours, right? That's all still going to be deductible. That's a really important thing to think about too if you are planning out your travel. Now, the 6th tip is one of my favorite tips too. It's one of the easiest ways to turn a business trip into also a bonus vacation, right? And that is to take advantage of the sandwich day rule. Now, what that basically means is that if you are working on a few non-consecutive days, so for example, maybe you are making a meeting, or maybe you have a conference on a Thursday and a Friday, okay? And then you make a client meeting on a Monday, right? And it wouldn't make sense necessarily to travel all the way home and back on that weekend. In fact, most of the time that would be more expensive, and you would want to be able to show that, right? But assuming that it would be less cost to actually stay where you are, these sandwich day rules means that your lodging and your meals will be business expenses even over a weekend that you are not working. Okay, so that is a fantastic way. That was something that I used to love to use all the time, is to tack on some extra days. And you can do that very strategically when you plan your trip to make sure that, it doesn't have to be over a weekend either. You could plan activities for a Monday and a Wednesday, or a Monday and a Friday, right? And potentially get some days where that lodging is considered to be a business deduction, all right? Again, you'll want to document that and the fact that it's cheaper to just stay than it is to travel back and forth. But that is a really, really good one to be able to just make a business trip into also something that can be fun personally, without, having to lie about the purpose of your trip. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you join the giveaway for $1,000, especially if you were watching this in July of 2022. That giveaway is going on. We are giving away $1,000 to somebody. It might as well be you. YouTube, you need to step up. Come on in here. Let's get some more entries into this contest. There's still lots of possibilities for you to win. Go to jamietrull.com/giveaway in order to get your free entries into the contest. We're going to announce the winner on August 1st. I'm super excited about it. We're trying to reach 25,000 subscribers on this channel. You get an entry just for subscribing and then going to jamietrull.com/giveaway and letting us know that you subscribed, and then you get an entry. Easy as that. So please make sure to do that. We would love for you to check out some of the other information and content that we have over on this channel. Lots more tips on maximizing your tax deductions, and we will see you next time.